So I'm working on my top 25 players list, but that's hard, and I change my mind too much about players. But you know what I don't change my mind nearly as much about? Next season and what I think will happen. In this video, we're going to talk about some predictions in the standings and playoffs. The awards will get their own video soon, because that would make this video hecka long. So let's get started. We're going to start with the East, and I think the worst team in the East is going to be the Orlando Magic. Orlando has a few good young players like Cole Anthony, Jonathan Isaac, and Markelle Fultz. But I think Fultz is injured, so I don't know if he'll play much next season. But they still kind of suck, so they're in 15th. I should mention, these are kind of more of power rankings, I guess, but also season rankings, so I don't know. But in 14th, I got Cleveland, but they could be a play-in team if literally everything goes right. You could say the same thing about every team, though, but they got Colin Sexton and Darius Garland and other good players, but, it's Cleveland, so you don't know. They're thinking of trading Sexton too. He's always in trade rumors anyway. In 13th, we have Detroit, and their ranking pretty much all depends on Cade Cunningham and how good he's going to be out the gate. He has potential to be like Ja Morant and lead them to the play-in, at least the play-in or even playoffs in his first year, because that team is already pretty good with the young core. But the East has a plethora of good teams now. It's not like it was 2-3 years ago. So I don't know, but we'll see. In 12th, we have the Wizards, because right now, after the trade for Kyle Kuzma and the rest of the Laker players, it's literally just Bradley Beal, unless you think that Kyle Kuzma is going to turn into a star. I personally don't think he's going to do that his first year there, maybe later in the future. But it's just Bradley Beal by himself. In 11th, I have Toronto, because they got rid of their most important player in franchise history, Kyle Lowry. And they might get rid of Siakam, as I have heard him in trade rumors to the Warriors and other teams like the Kings or whatever. And now that we get into the play-in teams. So I have the Pacers at 10th, because they somehow always magically stay good, even after losing stars like Paul George and Oladipo. And they might apparently trade Miles Turner, so we'll see. I think they lost Malcolm Brogdon? I could be wrong, though. I'm pretty confident that he signed elsewhere. I might be thinking of a different player, but they lost Brogdon, so that's another blow to them. But somehow they always stay semi-relevant and competitive, so they're probably going to be 10th. And in 9th, I have the Charlotte Hornets, because they added Kelly Oubre, and I think LaMelo is going to make another jump, and he's already really good. So if he didn't get injured, they would have for sure been a playoff team, because I think they were the 6th or 5th seed, something like that, and then he broke his wrist. So I have them in 9th. In 8th, I have the Boston Celtics, and they won't be bad, but they're not going to be great, because they have the talent like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart and other pieces that's good enough to make the playoffs in the East. And if they could stay healthy, they could be way better, depending on how good Jason Tatum becomes. If he makes another jump, because he's making a jump like every year, it seems. But I don't see them being better than anyone above them, except maybe number 7. And that leads in 7th, I have the New York Knicks. And that's not disrespect to them. It's just that every other team got so much better. They did add Kemba Walker, I think. That was a really good pickup for them. I kind of slept on it for a while, but it's really good. They needed just someone to get a basket in the playoffs, because Julius Randle just wasn't cutting it. They were relying on buckets from Derrick Rose, and that's not good in 2021. So that's who I have as the bottom 8 teams, plus the Knicks, so 7. So now we get into the for sure playoff teams. And at 6th, I have the Chicago Bulls. So the Bulls are probably the second biggest winner of the offseason. They went from their ceiling being a play-in team, and now I think that's their floor if everyone stays healthy, obviously. I have them at 6 since I feel like there's going to be growing pains for like the first 30 or so games working, because they're adding Lonzo and DeRozan, and Levine and Vucevic barely played with each other last year, if I remember correctly. So, but after that, they should be a really good team. I think that they can put it all together. They can very well be in like 4th, but I think 6th is good for now. At 5th, we have last season's first place team, the Philadelphia 76ers. Philly is in a terrible situation right now, and the main part of that is, what the hell do we do with Ben Simmons? No team is willing to give up much for him, and Morey wants a deal like the James Harden for Ben Simmons deal. Not only are they delusional in thinking they're going to get a star in return, but Ben doesn't want to be there anymore and is trying to force his way to California. So Philly isn't going to, I don't think they're going to be a real contender next year with all this drama going on. They are so lucky they locked Embiid up for the next 5 years, but other than that, there was nothing good about this offseason. So in 4th, you have the Atlanta Hawks. Atlanta was a big story in last year's postseason, and the rise of Trae Young, that's really fun to see. I like seeing young players succeed, but I don't think they did quite enough this offseason to keep up with everyone else and be a contender. They got John Collins. They might have made a few moves, but overall they just stayed the same. And that's good, but they made it to the conference finals last year, and that was mainly because the aspect of dark horse or surprise team. So now everyone's going to expect you to surprise them, so you can't catch anyone off guard like you did Philly or New York last year. I still think that they're going to be really good, but I think there's 3 teams above them. And in 3rd, we have Miami. And Miami, they got a whole lot better. They added Kyle Lowry and PJ Tucker to their core of Jimmy, Bam Adebayo, and Tyler Hero, and Duncan Robinson, who signed a massive extension. I think it was $90 million, if I remember right. It's pretty stacked, and that makes them a contender once again. In 2nd, I have Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks are kind of the same as last year, and that's alright considering they can't really do that much anyways, because no one really wants to go to Milwaukee. No need for drastic changes after winning the championship anyways, but in 1st, I obviously have the Brooklyn Nets, a super team, and last year's injuries suck for them, but I don't think it's going to be as bad this year. Kyrie himself is pretty injury prone, but Harden is usually an Iron Man, and he can play through injuries and stuff. And KD is pretty good at taking care of his body since the Achilles tear. They were a shoe size away from beating the champions with 1 1/4 of their stars playing, so nothing will probably stop them in the East this year aside from Milwaukee and Miami, and of course themselves with injuries. So now we're going to move on to the West. Obviously, we're going to start with the worst team. So in 15th, I think the worst team in the West and in the whole league is going to be the OKC Thunder. Need I say more? Even Thunder fans know that they're focusing on development for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and other young pieces, and they're planning for way, way, way into the future. I kind of like what they're doing, getting draft picks and stacking up. It's working out for them, but obviously they're going to suck next year and probably the year after that. and for the next 3 years maybe. But it'll probably work out anyways. In 14th, I have San Antonio. There's literally no way the Spurs stay relevant next year after losing their best players. They lost DeRozan to the Bulls, and I think they also lost another key player that is blanking me right now. But the time for the Spurs to hit the rebuild button after a historic run of winning basketball, it will officially start this year. In 13th, I have the Houston Rockets. Houston has a very good young core, and they have their player for the future. They got Jalen Green along with Kevin Porter Jr. and Christian Wood, which is a good young three players to build the future around. We all laughed at them for the Harden deal because it didn't seem like they got anything in return, but right now Houston is in a real good spot for the future. Sadly, this video isn't about the future, it's about right now, and right now they still suck. In 12th, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. What the hell happened to them? One of the brightest futures, and now, after how they handled the whole Lonzo situation, I have no faith in their ability to build around Zion and Brandon Ingram. They could very well be a play-in team, but I don't know about that. I'm still not confident on Zion staying healthy. So they need to get their act together or else Zion's going to leave. Apparently his family's already distraught there. So good job, New Orleans, I guess. In 11th, I have the Timberwolves. And they could be higher and in the play-in, but D'Angelo Russell seems to be made of glass, and they always seem to disappoint. I could very well see them in the higher play-in teams because Cat, Anthony Edwards, and D'Angelo Russell is a really good big three. But I can see them being competitive next year. It all depends on health and circumstance. But in 10th, we're going to start the play-in teams, and I have the Sacramento Kings. They have the best young backcourt in the league, and you can argue with a brick wall on that one. Sadly, we suffer from Luke Walton as our head coach itis, and therefore won't be as good as we have potential to be, and could even miss the play into the Timberwolves or Pelicans. And in 9th, I have the Memphis Grizzlies. Them as well as like the last three teams I mentioned. They could all switch spots with each other. They're all similar in talent and situation, and I'm putting the Grizzlies higher because they made the playoffs last year, and they have that experience now. In 8th, I have the Portland Trailblazers because we will once again be watching the Damian Lillard show, barring a mid-season trade. If Dame gets traded, put the Blazers in like 12th and move everyone else up a spot, I guess. But in 7th, I have the Clippers, and that is rounding out the play-in. Before you get mad or surprised, just remember that Kawhi Leonard tore his ACL, so for, at the very least, a good chunk of next season, he's not going to play, and it's going to be the Paul George show. And Paul George is a little bit injury-prone, but I think he'll be healthy enough to lead the Clippers to the play-in. He's a dark horse MVP candidate, if you ask me. Either way, if Kawhi was healthy, the Clippers would be top 4. In 6th, this is marking the now guaranteed playoff spot, I have the Dallas Mavericks. Now, Dallas is weird right now. They have a generational talent, but everything else is weird right now. Luka signed a 5-year extension, so good for them. But they hired Jason Kidd, and however Kidd does as a coach will determine how much better or worse Dallas will get. They need to utilize Porzingis like a second option instead of a corner sitter in 2K. But Dallas could be better than the next team maybe, but probably not because in 5th I have the Denver Nuggets. Because Jamal Murray is hurt, and I forget how severe his injury is. Maybe he'll be back midway next season. But if he wasn't, they would be so much higher. Jokic and everyone else should be good enough to make the playoffs easy. In 4th, I have the Phoenix Suns. The Suns just made the finals, and even Suns fans will tell you that they were aided by, at the very least, injuries. They did add JaVale McGee, which is a good move and a backup for Ayton, but sadly, everyone else might be better. I don't think they improved enough, and they got a little bit lucky last year. I like Phoenix a lot, but I have to admit they did get a little lucky. Because if they faced a healthy Clippers team, they would have been out. And the Lakers. And even I think if they faced the Mavericks, they would have lost too. But that's besides the point. In third, I have the Utah Jazz because they are built for regular season success. Do I think they're better than the Suns, Mavericks, Clippers, and Nuggets? Maybe the Mavericks, but everyone else? Hell no. They have Rudy Gobert. So they're not contending with Rudy Gobert as their second best player. They couldn't even beat Paul George, Reggie Jackson, and Terrence Mann once in a playoff game. So they're not really built for the playoffs except Donovan Mitchell, who is one of the best playoff performers in the league right now. Free my man if they disappoint once again. To be honest, I just threw them in at third because I forgot they were a team. So there's that. You could put them in like just above the Mavericks, I guess. Maybe the Nuggets if you count regular season mostly, but that's pretty much it. And so we're gonna go to second, and that's the Golden State Warriors. They had a decent offseason, despite what many think. Sure, they couldn't get a star, but to be fair, there wasn't really one on the market that would actually work out because they either wanted to stay where they were or it was their general manager was asking for too much, like Daryl Morey. And they got Draymond, Clay, Otto Porter Jr., and of course...
Of everyone on Golden State, open shot, fate of the universe on the line, or the Martians have the death beam pointed at Earth, you better hit it. I want Iguodala.
And Wiggins and younger players like James Wiseman, Moses Moody, and what's his name? Jonathan Kuminga. I will not say his nickname because I don't really... I'll just put up a picture if you want. But this team, they very well could be first in the regular season, but I'm going to have them in second because Clay's going to miss like the first 2 months probably, and he's got to get in a groove again. And obviously, this is Curry's best chance at an MVP. So he's going to go berserk. So that should be really fun to watch because we all love Super Steph games. And, of course, in first, I have the Los Angeles Lakers. They're old, but they're still damn good. I was suspect about the Westbrook deal, and then they signed literally every good free agent on the veteran minimum. And now this team is a super team, like the Nets. So now we got 2 super teams. Woohoo! So now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the playoffs now. So here are my way too early playoff predictions. I'll throw up the seeding or bracket that I think is going to happen. So I'm just going to predict that the conference finals matchups, in the West, it's going to be the Warriors versus Lakers, and in the East, it's going to be Bucks versus Nets. The Bucks versus Nets is so cool because of what happened last year, and the Nets are trying to prove that they are damn near unbeatable when healthy, and Milwaukee is trying to prove that they could beat Brooklyn without the injuries. And this Bucks team grew a lot ever since that series, and I think this is going to be a 6 to 7 game series. If Giannis plays like how he did in the finals, it could get really intense. But I'm going to say Brooklyn wins in 7 because even just Harden and KD, like let's say Kyrie got hurt, that should be enough on its own. In the West, it's going to be really close, but for different reasons. LeBron is trying to prove that he's still the best player in the league, and Steph is trying to prove that he is the best and he doesn't need a stacked team to win, like everyone on Twitter thinks. If you look at depth alone, the Lakers got it, but there is one factor that gives the Warriors an edge: Russell Westbrook. Westbrook, a lot of the times, has been disappointing in the playoffs, shooting his team out of games, or just trying to do too much and having tunnel vision. So the main question is, will he listen to LeBron James? This series goes 7, and I think the Lakers would probably win, but expect to see some super Steph numbers, and I could very well see the Warriors winning too, just because of how good that big three could be. But I think that's a hot take, so I won't really get into it. And in the finals, it's two super teams, Nets versus Lakers. Woohoo! Everyone's happy. The team has super teams. The league has super teams and stuff. Alright, without wasting your time, I think it's Nets in 6. I just have more faith in the Nets right now because of their age and injury history. Durant and LeBron, they kind of cancel out because they're just so good, you know? And don't give me no play of LeBron is different, because you look dumb as hell trying to act like playoff KD did not just go crazy this last postseason. I think Harden is going to thrive as a second option and not underperform like he usually does. And if Kyrie's healthy, Kyrie is going to be Kyrie. And on the Lakers side, and Anthony Davis, I'm sorry, I don't have too much faith in him to stay healthy, kind of like Kyrie Irving. But when he is healthy, he's either a god or he just doesn't look like he wants to be on the court, and he has a disappearing act like we've seen in the finals when we want him to take over, but he's just way too passive. So why should I trust you if you only had 2 healthy seasons in the last 6 years, and you tend to just be like stagnant for some games? And one of those healthy seasons was a 4 to 5 month hiatus in the middle of it. And Westbrook, I don't know. I love the dude, but I can't ignore his playoff failures, except for like 2017, because that was not his fault. And the Lakers' depth is alright, but the Nets also got depth too, because they just added Paul Millsap, I think, and LaMarcus Aldridge off the bench. So I just think this Nets team has a better chance and fits better together. But hey, that's just my way too early season predictions. If you like the video and comment. Subscribe to help the channel grow. If you disagree, you can leave comments in the you can leave a comment in the comment section. I might debate with you if I feel like it, but I don't really know. So that wraps up the video. Like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time, hopefully with a top 25 list.